What you're about to hear are two versions of a comically traumatic event from about 25 years ago. My old friend and ex-roommate Ned Rauch and I each recorded our fugues in isolation. Later, I stitched both accounts together for a coherent telling of this horrifying story. This is part one. So Jim, Ned, and I, former college roommates, got our first apartment in New York.
On West 109th Street.
I think between Amsterdam and Columbus.
138 West 109.
And it wasn't until it got a little colder that we noticed some sounds in the walls when it rained out. It was like high-pitched squealing and little bodies flailing on top of each other.
You could hear them running across the ceiling in the crawl space between our ceiling and the floor of the apartment above us.
Somehow we came to find that 109th Street on that particular block was known as Rat Street.
I remember I built a loft in which to sleep, which was pretty clever, but it raised my bed up to, closer to the ceiling, and I could hear the rats run. They would start at one end of my room, or the ceiling of my room. They would run, and they would skid and sort of slide across the rest of the ceiling. And I remember I could hear them sliding across the ceiling above me as I slept.
And there was a big hole that somehow, from a leak of some kind, like the paint bubbled up and opened up a gigantic hole. And not necessarily putting two and two together, that with a hole like that, and knowing that the rats seemed to be inside the walls, that maybe a couple would drop through the hole.
And I remember seeing rat tails drooping down through the hole into our living room. At one point, we affixed a box or a paper bag, underneath the hole so that if a rat happened to misjudge it, slide, and fall through the hole, we would catch it and at least not have a rat running around. But in fact, at some point, we did have rats running around in the apartment.
And where would they live? Obviously, our oven, which we, as a result, never one time used. We never, ever used our actual stove or oven because Jesus fucking Christ.
There was a night, I think it was the night our friend Wallach was coming to visit, but again, I might be conflating a couple nights, but...
my heart is racing as I tell this. I'm starting to freak myself out. So we knew when they were in the stove because they rattled around in there. And you'd like to tell yourself that it's not just a rat moving around in our stove, right? But yeah, that's the assumption. And you can't allow it to be. So we had to figure out ways to get them out of there.
We turned on the oven to try to smoke it out or to cook it out, I guess, or bake it out. I mean, disgusting.
Broil. And it's like not 200 degrees. It's all the way up. And the rat sometimes would rattle around. He'd poke his head under and be like, "You motherfuckers, you better knock it off."
The smell of I think you could smell the rat's fur burning. I think it had hidden itself in the insulation of the oven. And so it wasn't really cooking, but it was getting hot.
We didn't want to try to kill it. We just wanted to catch it or make it so he only had one direction he could go when he came out. So we set up a line of bags. So if he tried to go right out of the stove, he'd run into a bag. We'd jump on the bag, close it. If he went left, we cordoned off any area that he could get through. So we blocked all entrances into the bathroom, into any of the bedrooms, boarded everything up. We propped the apartment door open so he would just roll right outside. And sure enough, he popped out, the whole body. He was big. And he was like, "I'm going to make a move." And we were like, "Jesus Christ, what's it going to be?" And he took a left.
And it ran toward us. And I think it ran right at Gabe. Gabe, you jumped up and it sort of spread eagle and it ran underneath your legs. Like if this were hockey, it ran through the 5-hole.
We screamed like children, "Get out of the way." And we're chasing him. I remember chasing him down the hallway. And he's boom, he's going right for the door. Holy shit, it's working. Except the front door to the building was closed. We did not prop open, or maybe we did and someone closed it, but he had nowhere else to go.
The door was shutting, I think. Yeah, the door was closing, and it tried to make this last dash to the door.
Makes a U-turn at the front of the building door, comes right back at me. And then I'm like, shut the door. I know Ned and Jim are on the other side of the door. And I'm like, shut the door, no. And they shut it, and the door's shutting so slowly. And the rat is approaching it. But he's not going to, like, the part of the door where the handle is. He's trying to squeeze through, which I assume is a rat move.
Chose the side of the door that's attached on the hinge side of the door, which closes very quickly. It gets narrow quickly. And
at the exact right second, it closes right on his neck. Boom. Like, literally picked him up and snapped his neck. And I just watched the outer half of his body fall.
And it cut the rat in half.
And I was not rooting for him to die. I mean, I was like, no, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. And he did not make it.
That was horrific. And I remember this silence. I remember all of us looking at each other, just thinking, what have we done?
Yeah. So that's a wrap on part 1. If you haven't guessed already, this is an experiment in the Rashomon effect, which reveals a pretty universal truth about perception. And that's that the same event can be experienced and remembered in completely different ways by different people. It was named after the 1950 Japanese film Rashomon, where 4 characters give contradictory accounts of the same incident. And this shows how our memories aren't reliable recordings, but active reconstructions. And this harkens back to a pretty central theme of Fugues, which is that we're all pretty crazy. What follows now is a little post-mortem between Ned and I. Ned had just heard what you just heard.
One, we have a divergence on the first rat that we thought we had expelled from the apartment, but we didn't have the front door of the building closed. Now, I believe in your story, it was running out our apartment door. In mine, we had gone out into the hallway, hit a dead end, and came back in.
Yeah, I had forgotten about the doubling back, and that still makes sense. That's not a situation where I go, oh, I remember it differently. That was just a gap, and you mentioned it. I go, oh yeah, of course, that's how it happened. He doubled back, and that's why we could see it from both sides. You were out, we were in.
Yeah,
we all got such a big perspective understanding of what happened. Yeah, and you saw his back end get detached, but we saw his front end get detached.
Okay, so that's another one. I love how you say it, because you're like, and he was cut in half.
Actually, this is what he said.
And it cut the rat in half.
Do you remember it actually being front part separated from back part of rat?
I think I do. I think I remember that sort of realization for us. Like, whoa, we severed a rat in half with our door.
Well, he severed himself. He severed himself.
Well, that was the other thing. It was such a bad call on his part. Like, the rats have this sort of reputation for savviness. That rat did not. It wasn't up to snuff.
Not a savvy move.
Not a savvy move.
Okay, here's one other one for you.
Yeah.
Did you really see rat tails coming out of the hole?
I think so, but I don't know. You know what? I've thought about that over the years. I'm not sure whether that was something that happened that I remember seeing, or whether that was a fear that I sort of conjured and now can remember the image that I was afraid would happen.
Totally.
Does that make sense?
That too. It absolutely makes sense. Like, did you hallucinate it?
I also remember I remember setting out the glue traps for a rat that we thought we had cornered, and coming home from work or something, and like,
oh god,
just some of the glue traps missing, which is like not in the realm of the outcomes I thought was possible. I thought either we wouldn't get the rat, he would have outsmarted us, or he would be stuck in the glue traps, but they were just gone. There was like no rat and missing glue traps. I don't know where they went or anything.
It's amazing what your imagination conjures, because then I had a couple things. I remember there being like a foot left in one of the glue traps, but I don't know if that's someone else's story that just became mine in the retelling of it or the rethinking of it. And then all I can imagine is the one that did get away somehow with a glue trap forever, his foot stuck in, being like, oh, exactly. That's the legend of Uncle Jesse.
Yeah.
You can still hear him coming. I was also curious, did you ever use the oven?
So I remember heating up beans on the stove, not infrequently, but I don't think any of us braved the oven ever.
And I don't think either of us were super inclined to put a roast in there anyways,
right.
but It certainly wasn't anything I'd ever considered.
No way. And then once we knew that the oven was a haven for the rats, we had no interest. I remember like sort of not trusting that whole end of the apartment at a certain point.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not doing the dishes. I'm not going over there.
Right. And like knowing that there was like, beer in the fridge, be like, I don't need to be thirsty now.
Exactly where my head just went. If someone was brave enough, it was like, can you please grab 7 beers and just bring them into the living room where we can, I don't care if they're warm, drink them fast.
Exactly.
Now on to part 2. If you thought part 1 was traumatizing, hold on to your sheets.
Our roommate Jim had this experience. I guess a rat climbed up on his bed and onto his chest, and he woke up, and the rat stood up on its back legs, sitting on its chest, stood up, and kind of made like a boxing motion. I remember Jim talking about like a cartoon boxer, like its little fists going in circles. And I remember Jim talking about that, and he yelled, and the rat yelled, well, it didn't yell, but it did the cartoon boxing move, and then it jumped off and disappeared.
Now for this one, no one has any way to verify if this was just the most awful dream ever, or if poor Jim actually experienced this. But Ned may have a clue in our post-mortem chat.
Did we talk about how once I moved out, I saw an MSNBC story about rats in New York, and they interviewed the people who lived in our building, one apartment over.
You did tell me that.
Okay, and the dad in that family said that his son, I never totally believed the boxing rat story with Jim's son. I didn't believe, I just like, maybe there's some exaggeration. So this neighbor of ours told a story on television about a rat climbing into bed with his son. And suddenly I go, oh man.
And then it makes you want to look up, like, is this a phenomenon that rats do? Do they get in the bed?
Do they get cozy?
I did look this up to see if they do, in fact, get cozy. Is it a known phenomenon of rats hopping into people's beds and climbing on their chest? It was hard to find much info, but I did read the following. While unlikely with wild rats, it's not impossible for them to climb onto a bed if motivated by food or, and I quote, in the case of severe infestation. Speaking of infestation, let's move on to part 3. And I know what you're thinking. There's a part 3? And the answer is yes. I'm afraid so. Here we start to see where our universe splits.
There's another episode. Again, I can't remember if this is
the same night or not, because there might have been a number of these lowercase t traumatic rat events, or maybe it happened in the same night. There was an even bigger rat that was in the stove. Same idea. We're broiling it. This guy wouldn't come out. Like, he did not take the bait, and it was not smelling good. We were, I think, low grade cooking that actual rat. It really smelled like singed rat hair in our really disgusting kitchen. So at some point, after hours of this fight, we gave up. But we'd been at war for quite some time. We were exhausted. We were probably drunk. And I think we all just kind of went to bed, sheets just above our face. And eventually we fell asleep.
Jim woke up in the morning, and I remember a shriek.
And all I heard from down the hall was Jim and Ned. They were just going, Gabe? Hey, Gabe? And I was like, when you don't quite remember what you woke up to, like what had been going on the night before, and I was like, oh, I wonder what they want. And I walk through the door and I see Jim and Ned standing at the opening of the bathroom, and they were just like, do you want to see what is resting in the toilet?
He was in the bathroom, and we went into the bathroom, and the rat, a very big rat, was curled up in the toilet bowl
with his nose just under the sort of surface of the water.
And I remember clearly that it had singe marks on its on its sides. You know, some of its fur had been burned off, and it had, I think, maybe climbed into the toilet bowl to cool itself off after its time in the oven.
And maybe it just slipped and fell in the toilet, or was taking a swim. I don't know. Didn't make it. So then what? You couldn't flush that thing. Way too big to flush. They didn't know just how large it was until we realized we're going to have to pull this thing out. So I think we drew straws on who would reach into the toilet water and pull it out. And I think Ned lost, if I remember correctly.
I remember getting a plastic bag, putting my hand in the plastic bag, reaching into the toilet bowl and grabbing the rat's head and lifting it out. And it was probably a foot long and then another foot long tail.
It was like a small cat.
And walking it out outside the apartment, and people were on their way to work. It was like 7 o'clock in the morning, and they were on their way to work, and they were passing us on their way to the subway. And I was holding this 2 foot long, 1 foot body, 1 foot tail rat, dripping, and people just staring at me like their mouths agape. And I bought it and I dropped it into the to the wastebasket, the garbage can at the on the side of the street.
My job was with a bag to just get under the thing, and he'd drop it, and I run out the door. And that took longer than I thought it would, because he had to pull it up. Ned's tall. He's like 6'3", 6'4". He had to pull it up really high because the length of the thing with its fat ass was almost as long as what seemed like my arm, maybe at least from like forearm to fingertip. And the tail just as long. So he had to really hold it up over the water for me to get the bag under, and then he dropped it. And then I don't think I've ever teleported before, but I didn't run outside to the trash. I teleported to the trash. I was gone truly in a flash.
I still am sort of surprised I was brave enough to grab the rat, but I did. And I think it's the only time I've held a New York City street rat or brownstone rat.
And then we never slept again, and I haven't slept since.
It's interesting that we remember the very end, the disposal of the body, we remember differently.
Yeah, that's the one that really sticks out, because you have a very vivid memory, and I have a very vivid memory.
I don't know how to square that. There's no way to know, right?
Well, very sadly, the guy that would be able to confirm that is no longer with us. Love to Jim.
Love to Jim.
But I can't tell you how much I feel like I'm definitely right. I really recall that part of it. Like, you had a look on your face like it kept coming out. There was like more of it coming out of the toilet. And I was ready with like 8 bags. Like I remember layering like 8 bags so I wouldn't have to feel any possibility of its wet fur on my hands.
I remember the withdrawal of it, and you're right that it felt eternal. Like that, it was such a long animal for something that wasn't like a snake, which is like made to be long, Then our experience, our memories of our experiences diverge from that point. It's really interesting, because I swear I can remember standing in the morning sun on that lousy block and people going by and thinking like, what are they thinking as they look at this situation? And it wasn't that I felt like I was the only one out there or anything like that, but I remember feeling very exposed, very much like we have this thing from the deep that we're bringing out into the light, and like all you people are just going to go to your jobs where you type or you meet or you argue or whatever people do in their jobs.
So we really don't know.
And we never will. And it's one of those things, this isn't like a platitude where you agree to disagree, which is a weird concept, but it is one of those moments where like we just have to both be right at the same time, sort of.
And it's probably before the time that we could go find city footage. Right now, I bet if this happened now, we could probably go look and see what the camera footage shows. Either one of us being terrified and disgusted, dropping it out, we'd have our answer. But I think in 1999, not so much an option.
And there you have it. One of us was wrong. Ned's story was like the end of a hero's journey. He had traversed a dark underbelly of the city and came back out into the light. I distinctly remember running so fast to the trash with a bagged rat in hand that my feet didn't touch the ground. So, was someone lying? To me, the answer is, I don't think so. But we were both confabulating. I'm obsessed with confabulation, which I think explains the Rashomon effect. Confabulation is when your brain literally makes stuff up to fill in memory gaps, but you're not doing it on purpose. This happens with people who have serious memory problems like Alzheimer's. They'll tell you a detailed story about something that most likely didn't happen, and maybe it sounds like they're lying, but they're not lying. They're just trying to make sense of a patchy memory or understand their current reality. The thing is, we all do this. Everyone confabulates. It's like your brain saying, I don't quite know what happened, but this sounds about right. And this isn't just memory recall. This filling in phenomenon happens with perception, too. For instance, did you know that all of us, have blind spots in our vision? By a weird evolutionary fluke, there's a section of each eye's retina where there are no cells that detect light. It's a small spot where the optic nerve connects to your retina. As a result, blind spot. But when you look at a brick wall, you don't see a little section of nothing. You see a complete picture of the brick wall. And this is because your brain fills that gap using information from the surrounding area and from your opposite eye. And just as the visual system in your brain fills in your visual blind spots, confabulation fills in memory gaps. And in both cases, it prioritizes creating a complete, consistent experience, accuracy be damned. More disturbing is that from a Rashomon perspective, the story that quote-unquote wins, the one that's considered most accurate or true, just depends on who controls the narrative. And last time I checked, Fugues was my podcast, not Ned's. So pretty sure my account is the gospel truth. Sorry, Ned. Fugues is written and produced by Gabriel Berezin. Sound design and original music by Grant Zubritsky. Special thanks to my old friend Ned Rauch for his articulate and creative memory.
And mine too, while we're at it.
And shout out to our dear old pal, Jim Brennan. Miss you, Jim. See you in the next Fugue.